Why no one needs religion, and much less the secular ones. First and foremost, because it's never a good idea to base your decisions on false information, and much less your entire decision-making process. And it's interesting how religious people will apply critical thinking skills to major decisions, such as purchasing a new home, or buying a used car, or spotting fake news by realizing they're being lied to through the omission of facts by certain media outlets, usually the ones left of center that religious conservatives have grown to distrust, and understandably so. Though right of center media outlets do this too. And as a side note, perhaps there's a great opportunity for a truly nonpartisan media company to fill that niche, so people don't have to listen to news outlets they hate just to get the full picture that their media outlets of choice will not fully provide for them. And I bring this up because this inability to trust media companies, especially the ones that almost function as propaganda arms and bad policy excuse-making machines for major political parties, such as MSNBC and the Washington Post for the Democrat Party, or Fox News and the New York Post for the Republicans, this contributes to religious thinking as well. But coming back to religious people using critical thinking skills for certain things and totally ignoring them for others, this usually happens regarding the great unknowns in life, such as why are we here in the first place, or what happens after we die. All of a sudden, rational and critical thinking skills somehow shut down. And this is where demonstrably fictitious gods, angels, and messiahs rear their ugly heads in order to make sense of what can't always be easily understood at first. But it could be if more people took the time to not only think a little harder, but to accept the hard-to-swallow truths about reality. But instead, religious magical thinking takes over. Yet despite all the evidence refuting the principal claims of most major religions, from proving the earth was not created 10,000 years ago and much less in 6 days, and the fact that no one could ever fly into heaven on a winged horse since winged horses never physically existed, and so many other reasons proving that man-made religions are just that, man-made claims. Somehow, despite all this irrefutable evidence that disproves every major religion, there are still many secular scientists and even atheist commentators making excuses for religions. Here's a few unfortunate examples.
And I think without any question whatsoever, and I've spoken to many people about this, we are far, far better off with a society that has a benevolent form of Christianity than we are with a society that has adopted the fundamental tenets of wokeism or critical social justice. There's just no question about it.
Did you underestimate the importance of religious worldviews just in humans, just as through a evolutionary reality? Like, I was involved in secular activism for many years, and at that time, I was naive in thinking, oh, if people turn away from, let's say, Christianity or Islam, Judaism, whatever, Buddhism, they'll just adopt rational, critical thinking skills and would be a much better society for it. And I completely was ignorant about how, in my opinion now today, humans as a species need religion, and it's going to manifest itself in either traditional organized religion or other forms that take on aspects of religion.
Yeah, Brett has that famous thing, why beliefs are literally false but metaphorically true. Our mutual friend Brett.
We have minds that are programmed by culture that can be completely at odds with our genomes. And it leads to misunderstandings of evolution, like the idea that religious belief is a mind virus, that effectively these belief structures are parasitizing human beings, and they are wasting the time and effort that those human beings are spending on that endeavor, rather than the more reasonable interpretation, which is that these belief systems have flourished because they have facilitated the interests of the creatures involved.
Now you go to the elite scientists. This is a well-known number. 7% are religious, claiming a personal God to whom they pray and intervene in their lives. I submit to you that with the current atheist fervor that has taken on over the past several years, I would say launched, the modern atheists they're called, launched by the Dawkins book and the Hitchens book and the Sam Harris book and the like. So, here's my problem, here's my concern. When you're educated, and you understand how physics works, and you're mathematically literate, and you understand data, and you understand experiment, and you go up to someone who doesn't have that training, and they are religious, and you ask them, why are you religious and believing in invisible things that influence your life? What's wrong with you? Okay? That's unfair. It's not only unfair, it's disrespectful for the following reason. Until that number is 0, you've got nothing to say to the general public. These are scientists among us in the National Academy of Sciences who are religious and pray to a personal God, and I know some of them. And you're fighting the public for their religious beliefs? Figure that one out first, because maybe there's an asymptote. Maybe you can't change everybody. Maybe that's telling us something. Maybe there's something in the brain wiring that positively prevents some people from ever being an atheist. And if that's the case, in a way, they can't help it. And you'll never know it because you're not one of them. So I ask you, first, for compassion with the public, but you should target your exercise and your experiments on understanding that number.
This level of excuse making is probably doing more harm than good for people on an individual basis, just like religions overall do more harm than good on a societal level when it comes to justifying wars, propping up certain dictatorships rather than others, and simply denying billions of people their human rights. The counterproductive justifications that people need religion are too many to list in a less than 20-minute video. But one major reason worth mentioning is that religiosity does function, but only to a certain extent, as a psychological coping mechanism for all the hardships in life. And even on a neurological level, it serves as a terror management system that keeps people from being paralyzed with fear or having nervous breakdowns over aspects of reality they can't understand and much less control. But it is terrible advice to encourage people to deal with reality through delusional thinking, particularly the kind of thinking that further disinforms them about reality and ends up blocking the solutions to the problem people are praying about in the first place. And by continuing to make the excuse that some people just need religion, we might be overlooking a much better, more sustainable solution for all of humanity to deal with reality that could solve so many more problems that persist precisely because people can't get past religious falsehoods. For example, the inordinate amount of unwanted pregnancies that end up in children living in foster care and destitute poverty as adults because too many people believe that every pregnancy is a blessing from God without giving any thought to the reality of raising that child at all. Or the amount of dictatorships that persist because people have allowed themselves to think, for example, that Muslim theocrats are the only conduits of God. Or tyrants like Putin were put in charge of invading other countries because it's God's will. Or the reverse, the case of so many Cubans, like my family, who fled a communist dictatorship instead of staying and fighting against it because they believed God would bring the Castro regime to justice, and if not here, in the afterlife. There are no excuses to continue perpetuating religious falsehoods that blind people not only to reality, but to the solutions to their problems that they keep praying for like a vicious cycle that loops itself. There isn't a single good that religion provides that can't be had without it. The moral compass, the sense of community, the meaning, the purpose, these can all be had without the reward of heaven that is totally fabricated, or the fear of an equally fabricated hell which isn't even mentioned in the Old Testament. Our deeds and feelings would be so much more genuine and profound without the baseless delusion of being watched over by a sky daddy. And it's interesting the amount of religious conservatives that are rightfully against a big brother government watching them all the time to the point of possibly reading their thoughts through artificial intelligence algorithms and implanted brain chips. Yet they have no problem with an imaginary God knowing absolutely everything about them, down to their most intimate thoughts they may not share with anyone else and might not even allow themselves to think too much about. And it's that restriction of thought, that atrophying of reason, that probably keeps religious mindsets around, with all too many well-meaning secular academics and scientists justifying it.
Lisa, thoughts on the future?
I think I would stand by my descriptions that I think that there are some advantages to religious belief, but I think there are also some major, major disadvantages, some of which Steve has talked about. And I think from my perspective, it's probably about time to wonder whether or not the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, frankly. And because there are other meaning-making systems that are available to humans to help them make sense of the world, some of which may not have the disadvantages. They may have the advantages of religious belief, but they might not also have the disadvantages. And so I probably lean more in the direction of wondering how it would be possible to test that, to investigate that.
We can't afford to continue hesitating, calling out the harms that outweigh the benefits of religion, especially considering the specific harms caused only by religious thought, such as the lethal level of homophobia in certain Muslim nations. These problems could be dramatically reduced and even ended altogether if it weren't for the persistent excusing of religion. But though we really need to stop making excuses for religions, I would never suggest outlawing them either. We already know through history that leads to a whole different type of religious thinking in the form of totalitarian governments with their own special breed of supreme beings on earth. Unfortunately, religions and religious type thinking that makes them possible are here to stay within most people's lifetimes as of the making of this video. But I hope this video helps whoever is listening to understand we need to tip the scales of human thinking and knowledge in favor of science, reason, and evidence-based thinking to outweigh all the magical, irrational, and downright lazy thinking that keeps religions alive. And like I said, it's not simply the spiritual religions that do more harm than good. It's the secular ones too, like communism, social justice idiocy, and even capitalist hustle culture nonsense that enriches a few greedy scam artists while impoverishing people who are often too young or too desperate and vulnerable to see through the schemes. Religions, by their very definition, are belief systems that require blind faith, which in itself is the suspension of critical thinking. It's the delusional hope that somehow, some way, everything's going to be alright, either through the willpower of a fictitious supreme being or by sheer fate or wishful thinking. And this is what's holding back genuine progress by creating a vicious cycle of persistent societal problems people think they can pray away, or that they can join the correct political team that claim they're going to fix problems that actually persist because of religions and lazy thinking in the first place. So when I say no one needs religion, this doesn't just apply to Christianity or Islam or even Buddhism that does end up functioning like a religion too. It's not exactly a philosophy, though I really do love Buddha, especially the fat jolly one over the sleepy-eyed, self-righteous one who left his kid and wife behind in real life. And yes, I will shamelessly plug my own artwork at this point of the video. T-shirts like these and merchandise are available in the links below. And if I got anything wrong in this video, please let me know in the comments below. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for upcoming videos, and please check out the links below for other original art and merchandise, and thanks for watching.